That must have been a minor gas emission, nothing more than that.
Hi everyone. For my initial target perceptions, I was getting a base surface. The immediate area felt like regular topography, pretty man-made. There were some distant mountains, irregular topography, multiple subjects in an indoor environment, artificial smells, and there was a sensation of a bit of foliage. Generally, the artificial man-made environment seemed to have the dominant presence there. It seemed like there were multiple subjects, multi-directional movement, and I got multiple visuals. Mainly it was of this sort of mountainous, barren environment, and then I saw this sort of trapezoidal shape, and then I saw on my second visual, I just saw a bunch of those subjects inside of that man-made environment. And then on the third visual, I just saw what seemed to be multiple structures or just multiple boxy shapes. The dominant session element was a subject. I moved into a series of flash sketches, and then I saw basically a big mountain, sort of whitish hues at the top, and then on my second flash sketch, I started to see a line of subjects near a wall, and then a hunchbacked subject sort of in walking motion wearing brown attire. Then I started to see more of these boxy shaped or boxy structure-y things, but it seemed like there was just darkness above it. I wasn't sure if I was here at night or if the structures are all indoors or underneath a dome of some sort. Then I continued to do flash sketches. On my fourth flash sketch, I saw a subject sitting at what seemed to be like a table, just seated. And then on my fifth flash sketch, I just saw foliage. Then I got another visual for that fifth flash sketch that was competing, and this was a much more barren environment. It seemed like there was just, I wasn't sure if this was a dome or if this was like a structure that was hidden underneath a more natural layer of land. And the natural layer of land seemed to just be humps and hills. I deducted like a mesa, but yeah, it was just mounds and stuff like that. Very barren. There was nothing really there.
What was that feeling? Last thing I remember, I was doing a remote viewing session, and now I'm in this spaceship? Wow, that view is incredible.
Your consciousness has been transferred to a clone body with 50% gray DNA to enhance your psychic abilities.
My hands, they're gray, and my face is gray, and my eyes are huge, and I can hear you in my head, this telepathic experience. It's so clear. This is amazing. There's like a 4K TV in my brain.
We have bifurcated your consciousness, so you are operating both bodies simultaneously. Everything you experience in your half-alien body will be transferred directly to FARSIGHT'S audience, so they can better understand your perceptions.
Whoa, so everything I can see when I'm flying around in this spaceship that you guys gave me, in this body, it gets transmitted directly to the audience who's watching the videos at Farsight?
Correct. You may continue your session when you are ready.
Next, I went to the center of the target and I started to perceive this darker navy blue perimeter around this wavy, irregular texture. It's sort of the look you get when you look at light that sort of distorts on the surface of unsettled water or something like that. There was this gradient, though, of dark and gray and lighter grays. I wasn't quite sure what I was looking at, but there was just that wavy texture. That was all I was really seeing. Then I started to see, I wasn't quite sure, it seemed like a non-surface structure, and it was in motion, and I wasn't sure if it was lowering itself to this flatter area, but when I looked beyond the flatter environment, once again, I'm seeing this wavy, mountainous topography. Then I started to continue to see if I could make heads or tails of what I was looking at, and it sort of looked like a rock. I was seeing this reddish-brown big rock, and it felt like it was bigger and smoother somehow than how I was drawing it, but it was just like this big rock. I got another visual, and it was sort of a bit more showing that slight smoother experience to the rock, but once again it just looked like this big rock, and there were two non-surface structures that I was seeing that sort of were adjacent to this big rock shape. I began to call this thing Object A, and I feel like I'm seeing a pair of non-surface structures moving towards this large, I don't know if it's a planet, but it's just like this big spherical rock looking thing. And then there was just these darker irregularities amidst the generally tannish, reddish, brownish hue. I deducted Mars, but it's just this big rockish structure or object. Then I began to move directly to Object A and describe Object A. And then I was starting to see inside of this sort of rocky environment, this trapezoidal, large, multi-layered structure that extended deep underground. And it seemed like it had parts of it, like a part of it that just sort of poked up out of the top of the base surface, making this sort of mesa-like trapezoidal mound. However, it looks like that area was sort of covered over with natural materials, so it kind of just looks like a trapezoidal-shaped mountain on the surface of this rocky thing. Then I began to move 10 miles up, and once again, I'm starting to see this just like the curve of this tannish, brownish, rocky shape. And then moving 100 miles out, I started to get really confused by the shape that I'm seeing, because it started to have that curve, but it was also sort of long and extended. And I deducted like an isosceles triangle. It sort of had these sort of trapezoidal shapes to it, but extended out like a long isosceles triangle type of shape. And then I started to notice there was a multitude of non-surface structures around this, almost like it's not like a pizza, because it's a pizza slice would be a little too wide. It's sort of stretched out, but it's like triangular, trapezoidal, long, isosceles triangle type shape. But yeah, a multitude of smaller non-surface structures were hovering around this thing, and there were curves on it as well. So I drew it kind of like a bubble, because I'm just trying to make sense of the perceptions I'm seeing. I started to move towards the surface of this object, and I started to see, or Object A, and I started to see basically a sea of metallic trapezoids. It just seemed like there were a lot of these trapezoidal mesa-like structures just coating the surface of this environment. And I feel like the metallic hard surface is smooth, and there aren't really these jutting bolts. It seems like there's like these large metallic structures, but I feel like it's like one piece. I don't really feel like it's got bolts in it. It just feels like it's smooth, it slopes up, and then it's flat, and it slopes down, and then it's flat, and it's like trapezoidal. Or it's like these are scales, or like one giant piece of metal that's in this shape. And anyway, I started looking at it from a top-down view, and I saw more of the pointier shapes, like pointy mountain-looking things. But looking at the top-down view of just one of these trapezoidal things, I'm starting to see this. I noticed there's two smaller non-surface structures flying above this mesa-like structure, and everything below looks relatively like natural topography. I mean, it just looks like this mesa mountain plot with pointier mountains, less trapezoidal, sort of in the distance adjacent to it. But yeah, it just seems like there's this underground structure directly below the trapezoidal shaped mountainous mesa-like mound. And then I started to move inside this Object A, and I'm starting to see this two non-human subjects. It looks, I got a flash perception of these two types of subjects, and they're quite prevalent within Object A, and there's multitudes of them. One of them has a tail, it has a snout face, it has sort of like cat eyes. It looks like a lizard person, just standing very tall. And the other one has a large head, it has large, dark, almond-shaped eyes, and just very non-human appearance to both of these subjects. I started to continue looking around, and I saw what kind of looked like a hallway that is extremely wide and extremely long, lightish, whitish hues or off-white hues in this environment, some silver hues as well, but it just... Most of the subjects here looked like they were non-humans. However, there were human subjects there. The majority of the subjects were sort of the paler, large head, almond-shaped eyes, dark eyes, non-human subjects. And then there was I saw one of these sort of reptile lizard person looking subjects, and they had these like plates on the back of their head, like from the front of the nose all the way back, and it was like these hard plates were on the skin. It's like that part of the body was especially tough. That was just an interesting perception I was picking up there. It showed. I mean, the color gradient compared to the other sides of the skin was different. It was just, but that part was just like really solid. Anyway, I started to get a flash of a human-looking subject, and this was the same type of human-looking subjects on the previous perceptions I was getting, and very dark, black, jet black uniform attire, hard headgear, and just everything was jet black. I mean, there were slight yellowish goldish accents, slight shiny silver accents on the chest, but otherwise, this is a jet black uniform, or wearing like fatigues that are jet black and just hard headgear, and a stern face to this subject. Very much a human-looking subject. Anyway, I moved to the leader of Object A, and I began describing the leader, and this is also one of those lizard-looking subjects. I noticed slight horns or spiky ridges on the top of the head. They're a slightly different color composition from the other reptile-looking subjects that are very similar, but this one has those spiked horns, like a horn on either side of the top of the head. And I labeled this subject Subject A. Going into a deep mind probe of Subject A, it felt like this subject's mind, it's like a lot of non-human subjects that I've perceived before. It doesn't seem like there's a cloud of chatter going on with like a storm of just mental chatter in the mind with mental imagery accompanying it. When I look inside Subject A's mind, I just see that the inside is, it's pretty, I'm not going to say it's empty, but it felt quiet. And I started to just see what I thought was what Subject A was looking at physically, visually. And it seemed like a dark, angular room. I could just, when I touched into the mind, there was nothing obstructing me from seeing just what was coming out of the eyes, or what visual perception was coming into Subject A's eyes. So then I started to continue and probe a little deeper. I felt that Subject A was aware of me, but not really paying any attention to me, not paying any mind to me. I don't feel like there's this jumping of topics. Once again, that mental chatter type of stuff, it was completely absent. But I did feel like Subject A was rooted into some sort of technological stimulation of some sort. And I got to see a couple glimpses of that, and it sort of seemed like a nest of blue light. This blue light was just in Subject A's mind, and Subject A's mind, it did feel pretty blank, but it was linked in, or like 100% tunneled in. All of his interactions were just tunneled in to this bluish nest of light and like lines of light. I feel like there's other subjects doing things in this nest of blue-hued lines and tangles. I mean, it's like a tangle mess of lines of blue light. And it's like Subject A is linked via this blue light, this tangle mess, into other subjects who are also linked into this tangle of blue technological light. And it's like this arbitrary space where these subjects are like linked in or connected, and it makes like a network, but the network just looks like a network of blue light. And when I start to just really hone into this perception, I see Subject A, and he can like perceive, or she, I'm not sure, it kind of felt like a feminine energy there, but Subject A can like see or perceive across this blue mess of light and tangled lines to what other subjects who are also integrated into this network are linked into. And it just seems like Subject A can see what these subjects are doing, see their actions, their environment, and their thoughts. It's like they're all linked, like a hive mind type of link that they got going on. And I've got this sort of visual to describe to the best of my ability. I mean, all of these subjects are in different environments, and they're doing different things, but their minds are like all linked up by this blue technological light stuff. Anyway, then I started to probe for the leader / Subject A and go into this deep mind probe of the purpose of this activity. And then I started to get this idea of this blue tangle mess of light. And it's, once again, I'm getting Subject A as this leadership figure, and I'm getting this idea of integration. It's like this integrates and unifies their actions. Everyone is on the same page. And this is what Subject A is sort of like telling me. I'm asking this, and like Subject A is saying,
this network integrates, unifies actions and reactions. It ensures everyone is on the same page at all times.
And this is the purpose of the blue light network. Then I start to probe a little further for other target activity. Like, what's the purpose of the general target activity and work that you guys are doing here? And then I start getting the sense that Subject A says,
We must insulate ourselves from surveilling forces that would attack or disrupt us if they could find us.
and then I see a flash of these sort of underground mesa camouflage. I just, all those structures that are underground, I get the sense that that's what I'm getting an answer to, that the purpose of having these structures underneath this rocky environment sort of half hidden is to do this, to prevent the surveilling forces. So then I start to probe again for the purpose. I'm like, what is the why are you even here? Like, what is the purpose of this place? And then I start to see distant star-like areas linked across with Object A being like this waypoint where things are coming in and going out, and they're going out of these two other star-like points. So I'm not sure if Object A is like just like a waypoint where things come to Object A and then go away, or if Object A is moving around or something like that. But the point is, there's this motion diagram that's coming across telepathically, this motion diagram of twinkles that look like stars, like in faraway places, with these holograms of like heads. And these head holograms are basically adjacent to these stars. Some of the head holograms look like the sort of pale-skinned, large black-eyed, large-headed subjects. A couple of those stars sort of look like that. Another one of the subjects looks more like one of those lizard people type of subjects. It doesn't have the horns on the head, but this energy flow, or this directional flow, is coming from these twinkly star type of things. They go to Object A. It's like this nexus point, and then they spread out to other areas. And some of those areas seem like they're spreading out to other places that do also have another hologram sort of above the star of like a non-human lizard-faced subject. And then another one actually does have a human-looking subject. That was the only human-looking subject I could see. The attire did not seem similar to much of the attire that like the one I'm wearing right now or something like that. It looks kind of unique attire. Slightly longer hair, very stern face on this subject. And yeah, but that was the only human-looking subject I saw, as like a major hologram above a star type of thing. And yeah, around these stars, it really, this whole thing was like a telepathic projection of these faces. Then these faces just felt, the energy of these faces were the dominant force, or the dominant directing force, linked to Object A in these other locations. And that was what I was getting as sort of this this idea of what was going on with this purpose. So I guess this was the purpose of Object A, as I kept digging into it.
Good, you're inside. Now the audience can get a better view of what is inside Object A.
This seems like a really bad idea. I feel like they're gonna catch me.
Quickly, you are entering the leader's chamber. Your Earth self has already completed his deep mind probe. Why is this half-human creature on my ship?
Then I started to move to Focus 2. I started to move to the optimal location to observe Focus 2 and began describing that. And I saw immediately the environment of Object A that I was describing, these trapezoidal mounds, these mountainous environments behind it, these sort of flurry of non-surface structures. I saw an explosion. I deducted an explosion. It seemed like part of the trapezoidal mound was just being erupted into this fiery, energetic ball, and it seemed like an explosion. And then I started to move up to see like the whole picture. I wanted to see like what's going on. I didn't really understand. And then I started to see something that I labeled Object Q. It looked like there was basically this it looks kind of like a manta ray shaped type of thing. I don't really know how to describe it. Maybe there's a better geometric term. The picture that I drew is the most accurate way to sort of describe it. It sort of looked like it had like a semicircle, maybe like a horseshoe crab type of shape, but it's like this semicircle up front, and then the back area was sort of like this angular, rectangular, almost trapezoidal shape in the back. And so it was curved up front, angular in the back. And this object Q, it's like it ambushed it. It zoomed up, and then it looked like I was just seeing energetics just shooting out and destroying all sorts of other things. I saw a flurry of also smaller non-surface structures just sort of spread out across the environment, and they were shooting at each other too. But these large structures, the large, big trapezoidal structure that I was seeing, this with all the sort of scaly trapezoidal mounds all over it, that was in a firefight. I mean, it was shooting energetics back at Object Q, but it seemed like Object Q was the initial aggressor. Object Q was coming in there and shooting at this object, or Object A or something like that. So it was coming in and shooting at it. And then I started to move to Object Q and describe, and I just got a better top-down visual of what that structure looked like. Once again, the curve in the front and sort of the boxy shape in the back, kind of like a manta ray, kind of like a horseshoe crab type of look. Anyway, that was basically what I saw here with the shape of Object Q. And then I moved inside of Object Q, and all of these subjects looked human. Very much, I didn't know if I was just seeing, I got this blue hue to them. I didn't know if it was blue on the skin, like blue skin, but the hair was sort of like a lighter orangey, blondie looking hair color, and they all seemed to sort of have that hair. But this looking at their faces, I just got a blue hue, so I didn't know if there was just, it's just blue. I just got blue and yellowy orange. That was the two colors that I was seeing as sort of dominant colors. Anyway, they all looked rather serious. They were sitting in chairs, and this seemed like a leadership subject here, just sitting in a chair. And yeah, this was the inside of Object Q. Then I moved to Focus 2 again. I mean, I was already in Focus 2, but I just continued on with the sequence of events, and I seemed to see this, there was a crack down the middle of this object, and it just seemed to have a lot of debris, and a lot of smaller non-surface structures seemed a little broken and like just floating off around it like in a cloud. And then Object Q just sort of zoomed away. It seemed like Object Q got the better of that engagement, and there was just this big crack down the middle of this Object A type of looking thing. I don't know if this is Object A, but it's because we're in Focus 2 now, but I'm not labeling it 100% Object A, but I guess it is Object A. It looks kind of similar to it. It's got the scaly, rough sort of stuff on it, but anyway, Object A, it just looks like it's got a lot of debris and smaller non-surface structures, and they're just broken things all over this non-surface structure, like a cloud of broken things, and they're just floating around it, and Object Q zooms off in another direction. I deducted like a hit and run. It just seemed like there were also a few of these smaller non-surface structures that didn't seem like they were fully destroyed. They were just flying around this environment still when Object Q left. But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm seeing. It's like a hit and run. Object Q comes up to this Object A looking thing, blasts it, gets into this big firefight. It seems like Object Q wins, and then Object Q flies away. And that is all the data that I have for this target.
Aziz, you must evacuate the ship. We have readings that another alien faction will be attacking your location soon.
We must stop this invading vessel from reaching the Earth experiment zone. All batteries, fire!
Gosh, that's happening right now. I gotta get out of here.
What was that? All units, battle stations.
try to get a telepathic read on the attackers, the audience needs to know who they are.
Okay. Gosh, I gotta focus.
Evade right, hard maneuver.
Taking the helm. Weapons cycling.
Got a lock on the lead triangular craft. Firing.
That must have been a minor gas emission, nothing more than that. You are a conspiracy theorist spreading lies if you say anything other than what I just said.
Hey, don't forget to check out my book, Remote Viewing 101, now available on Amazon. It has everything you need to become a master remote viewer. Every little bit of the process that I use to conduct my remote viewing sessions, it's in that book. Detailed explanations of each step so you can study at your own pace. And a couple of example sessions in the back with extra explanations of exactly what was going on in each step of that session. From deep mind probes to time travel, it's all there in Remote Viewing 101. And don't forget to check out our latest remote viewing sessions on FARSIGHT'Prime.com. Intisum just released an amazing session on the most technologically advanced cloning centers on Earth. Kamaya just published a fascinating deep dive on the upcoming conflict between the United States and Venezuela. And Shantae just uncovered some of the real intentions behind the United Nations decision to move much of their organization to Nairobi, Kenya. All that and more, only on FarsightPrime.com.
All right, Aziz, so we are here for the target reveal for the project that we call Solo 8A. And just for the audience's sake, you recorded your session in the studio totally alone, and you don't know anything about the target or the nature of the project. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, this is an interesting one. You want to know what the target was?
Yeah, I'm eager to find out.
Okay, this is what your session was about. This is 3I Atlas.
Oh.
That's the so-called comet that's whipping through the solar system. And we have people saying like it could be having intelligent life on it. So, and others are saying, no, it's just a comet. And so we're just investigating what is 3I Atlas. And this is the only really good data that is going to be available to the public, because this was done totally blind and with a great remote viewer and so on. So they had two focuses. The first focus was 3I Atlas at the current time. And now that was when you were actually doing your session, so that would have been November 8th, 2025. Okay? So the focus 2 is 3I Atlas at the time when it is closest to Earth, which I understand is going to be sometime in December of 2025. Okay, so that's this so-called comet. And anyway, before I make any more comments, what do you think?
So this is interesting. It seems like this is... I saw a lot of non-human and some human subjects inside the 3I Atlas thing, but it seems to get ambushed, or there seems to be some sort of conflict that happens, whether or not that's happening exactly to 3I Atlas or to stuff around 3I Atlas, I'm not sure. But it seems like there's just ET conflict happening with one side being mainly human-looking beings, and that happens at Focus 2, while Focus 1 seems not to have that type of conflict. So I guess whenever I severely doubt that any of this stuff would be disclosed if it actually happens in the mainstream. But if something does happen with 3I Atlas at Focus 2, I guess that'll be whatever sort of conflict is sort of happening in the session.
Well, I had I think it's good to look at some of the verifiables first. So I'm starting with page 11 of your paper session. I haven't seen your video session, but from your paper session you have something that just looks like a rocky surface and a non-surface structure above it. And then
Yeah.
if you go to page 12, you have a reddish-brown rock. And you feel like this is bigger and smoother than how you draw it, but it was you had deductions of an asteroid. So this is really good. And then on page 13, you say you feel like you're seeing a pair of non-surface structures moving towards a large planet-like spherical object with some darker irregularities amidst a generally reddish-brown hue, sort of like Mars. So this is early November, and so that was focus 1, early November, November 8th. So the basic idea is, and this object A, you have this large object A, you have it as brown, and it looks very much like a big rock. And a big rock in space. So in terms of the verifiables, you really got it. Then you go on into page 14 and 15. And it seems clear that you're describing some type of structure either on or below the surface of this large rocky object. So if I'm to interpret your stuff just just in terms of face value, it looks like there is an extraterrestrial presence, and it's either on the surface or below the surface of the asteroid or of the comet or whatever it is. So it's both the
rocky shape.
Yeah, the rocky shape. So it's both a natural object and an extraterrestrial object, and it's both natural and artificial. So there's both. There's something on it, is what it is. So people that are arguing it's just a comet, well, they're right. It's either a very large, a comet or asteroid, and people who are arguing that it seems to be moving in ways that are not what a comet would move, like increasing its speed and changing direction slightly. Avi Loeb has been saying stuff like that, the astronomer from Harvard. And, well, that would make sense here if there is a non-surface structure associated with it. So there's technology on it. So it's both natural, like a comet, but also, yeah. Anyway, so let me stop there and then go. And then we went into focus 2, which is when it gets down to... you have a lot of graphics also with the top-down view of the structure that's on the surface.
Where's what page are you seeing that top-down view?
Page 15.
Oh, back to 15. Okay. Oh yeah.
So it's an underground structure directly below this. So you have it like on the surface or below the surface.
Yeah, some trapezoidal-looking thing that's sort of semi-buried.
Yeah. And it looks like, from page 16, it's a reptilian ship that's on the object.
And there's a couple of non-surface... Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of non-human subjects. The reptilian-looking ones, as well as the balder, big-eyed ones. And there are some subjects that did look human, though.
Well, the reptilians always travel with slaves. They always travel with greys and humans to do stuff. The reptilians basically just puppet everybody else.
All right. Well, yeah, that's fascinating. So focus 2, that's basically where it gets closer to Earth, though, and that's really where I'm starting to see just conflict happen.
Yeah,
with a much more human-looking group.
I guess that really is on page 24.
Yeah,
but
and they seem to be fighting a group of humans that have... I drew them with sort of like a lightish blue hue on their faces, but I don't know if they had blue skin, but lightish blue hue on their faces, and then like a maybe blondish or orangish hair. They all sort of seem to look the same.
Yeah.
In terms of their appearances, but
it does seem like it's there's a shootout.
There's a shootout for sure, and yeah, the human-looking ones seem to have hit and run. I described on page 29. Just they zoomed in, blew up a bunch of stuff, zoomed out.
Yeah, so it looks like there's a conflict. And we are, in fact, getting to a point in the planet's own evolution where it looks like there is going to be a conflict between what we call the good ETs and the bad ETs.
Well, it's all I can say is that I hope we hear something, or we see something, or there's some evidence of something happening with the 3i Atlas experience.
Well, Avi Loeb and others have been saying it's getting closer, and in December it will be there. Mid-December, I forget the actual day. I think it's mid-December. It's going to be as close as they can. And it's been behaving weird. It's not following a typical... It's not acting like a comet. The light coming off of it is going off in front of it. It seems to be changing direction, but very slightly. Yeah, it's acting strange. And then the government's been withholding lots and lots and lots of information about it, lots of pictures. And Avi Loeb's been complaining about that. They said it was because of the government shutdown, but Avi Loeb was saying, government shutdown or not, doesn't take very much to send out the pictures. So the government shutdown, I'm sort of thinking that the suggestion implied is that the government may not want the pictures to come out. But it looks clearly like both sides are correct, that it is a natural object and it's also got some ET tech on it. And it looks like there is going to be a shootout come around December at some point. We may not hear about it. They keep so much secret to humans on Earth. It's so much goes on in the world and with the extraterrestrials, and the humans are kept in the dark. But anyway,
if this happened, all this conflict stuff in Focus 2, I think we'd be very lucky just to see a small flash in the astronomy circles.
Well, actually, that might be interesting, because if the astronomy circles are focused on it and they see flashes,
even one,
the astronomer people, like NASA people and stuff like that, they're just going to say, "You see, it's a comet."
Yeah,
that was just a gassing off. They won't recognize
a gassing off.
Yeah, they won't recognize it as an actual attack. So you're right. If we saw flashes, we would know what those flashes were, and the mainstream is going to definitely say it was just proof that it was a comet because it was flashing. It was gassing off.
Yeah. I mean, if that were to happen, if I was going to speculate even further out, this sort of event would result in us continuing to just be in the dark and sort of trucking along in our normal evolution of how things are going. Because if this thing was getting close and it had different aliens on it from the humanoid aliens that seemed to sort of ambush it when it got closer to Earth, that would basically result in, if they were able to successfully stop it from disturbing the experience of what's happening on Earth, the humans would do exactly what you said. They'd say it's just, oh, look, it's a gassing off thing, or it emitted a light or something like that, and they'll give some sort of ridiculous mainstream astronomy sort of excuse for it. And then everyone would just go about their normal thing, and we would still not be thinking of anything. We wouldn't keep pushing on this sort of disclosure narrative, and everything would just be horrible. So I mean, I don't know. It's just on one hand, you see the aliens that are involved in this target, and you think like, oh, let me pick a side on who I think is good or who I think is bad. But ultimately, looking at the session, now that I know the target, it actually does make me a little bit sad, because if this all happens and it does just sort of get explained away as just like, oh, it emitted a light, like a couple particles shot off of it, and then it went on its merry way, then we are thoroughly an enslaved species that are under the thumb of another species, and that species that we're under the thumb of might look very humanish, and we're just gonna stay down there, and that's horrible.
One of the predictions is that when it does get as close as it gets in mid-December to Earth, we're predicting some type of flash to be seen.
Some flash, and
some type of energetic release that the authorities will say it was just gassing off, but we'll know that it wasn't just gassing off. It was actually a thing.
Yeah, a gaseous cloud or something like that. I mean, that could be debris from actual destroyed spaceship material, but for them, they would just say like, "Oh, it's a carbon emission or something stupid like that." So,
well, comets have this type of gassing off all the time.
Yeah,
but this is not a straightforward comet. This is a large celestial natural body that has gases and other things coming off in a very different way than a normal comet does. And we're predicting that there'll be some type of flash event associated with it when it gets as close as it's going, sometime in mid-December, when it's as close as it's going to get to Earth. And that'll be very interesting to watch it, to see. What's sad is that the government's going to cover it up.
Yeah, the cover-up's just horrible. I mean, I guess the only thing we can hope is that if any of these spaceships crash, let them crash in like Manhattan or something like that. Something that everyone can undeniably see, like, oh, a spaceship crash. Like that's, gosh, I mean.
They would try to cover that up too.
They'd try something, you know. Anyway, it's a little bit of a bummer finding out the nature of this target just because of how the ending sort of appears in my mind. But let's hope that we get a little bit more data from a comet that has some unusual gas emissions.
Well, yeah. Well, still, this is going to be very interesting. And it will be as close as it's going to get in mid-December. And there will be an awful lot of telescopes pointed in that direction. So some of the telescopes might pick up some anomalous stuff. So this whole story about it is acting a lot like the Hale-Bopp comet, where the Hale-Bopp, Chuck Schrammick took a photograph. He was someone I knew in Texas. He was a news anchor in Houston, and he took some photographs of it. He was an amateur astronomer, and a few days after he posted them on his own personal website, he's a mainstream astronomer who was one of the biggest names in astronomy ever, called him up, and Chuck Schrammick was really surprised. Like, he said, like, how did you get my number? Because he was a news anchor, and that was the days when they had landlines, and like he had an unlisted number, and so how did he get his number? Anyway, the guy was absolutely adamant to take down those photos. And Chuck said, why is one of the biggest astronomers on the planet telling me an amateur astronomer to take down those photos? And then the guy called back a few days later and demanded again. He wasn't being nice about it. And Chuck didn't. And then, so that was sort of weird. But we did some remote viewing on the object that Chuck Schrammick took a picture of. He had 100 photos, actually. He only posted one, but he had 100 photos. And we did some remote viewing on it, and we said it was like a portal. So it was like in the line of sight. It was in the line of sight of when you're looking at the comet. We never said it was a UFO following Hale-Bopp. We said it was a something that was in the line of sight. And that was it. And then later, the government, the intel people, they were really concerned about dampening us down at Farsight. That was back in the late 90s, in the early time of Farsight. And I was really glad that this happened. It was one of the most fortunate events that ever happened. We got caught up in a psyops, where they organized behind the scenes for some images taken of this thing to be sent, mainstream images to be sent to somebody at Farsight. Not me, but anyway, the idea was they wanted us to use, the person contacted somebody at Farsight, and they wanted us to use those images for remote viewing. And the person who contacted us said he was an astronomer associated with the project dealing with the Hale-Bopp thing. Turned out he was not. He had nothing to do with it. He worked on some other project and some other stuff, wasn't even an astronomer. But he knew the person at Farsight. And so they sent this to us. He sent it to us, and there were 3 rolls of film. There were 2 blank rolls, completely blank, and one had 5 images on it. So that was what we were sent. And then the strangest thing happened. We never used him for anything. Art Bell, the Art Bell show, Coast to Coast, he called us up. He called me up and said, Courtney, Chuck Schrammick is having such a terrible time, and your good buddy Chuck Schrammick, he had to leave Houston. He's gone to Florida because he's being harassed so much. We need to help him out. Can you talk about those images that you said that some astronomer sent you? I told him, no, we can't talk about those because we don't have the copyright for those, and we didn't do those things, and they're not ours. And then Art Bell said, oh, but Courtney, Chuck Schrammick is really, we need to help him out. He's really in trouble. Now, I at that time wanted to get on the good side of Art because I wanted to get on his show and so on more often. And so I said, well, and he said, Courtney, really? I said, well, okay, how about we talk about them anecdotally, like about them, but we don't release them to the public, we just talk about them. And he said, yeah, okay, send me one so I can see it. So we sent him one. Now, these images that we were sent, of the 5 images, you could look at them with what we call a loupe, which is a magnifying glass. They were clearly very high quality astronomical images that were printed that were printed on a film printer, just like you print something on a piece of paper with a printer. Well, they had printers there that they print on film, super high resolution, and you could see the pixel lines on them. It was razor sharp, everything clear, and there was that thing that looked like it was an object in the same line of sight as the Hale-Bopp thing. Anyway, so. When we were on the show previously, we said it was like a portal, ships coming, things coming in and out. There was artificial stuff, and anyway. So that was, and then later, and December in December, Art Bell said he was going to release those photos, and they were submitted by Courtney Brown. And we said, what? We didn't submit them. We talked about it anecdotally on your show. Actually, I didn't talk about them. It was the person that was at Farsight, our webmaster, talked about them on the Art Bell show. Anyway, but he said that they were submitted, and it was like, we had an agreement that you wouldn't release them. We don't have the copyright. And so Art Bell in early January released them. That was, I think, in 1997, early January, he released them. And within like 24 hours, just a blink of an eye or less, like 2 mainstream astronomers from the University of Hawaii contacted him and said, these were ours, they were stolen from our website. Now, mind you, we had not used them for anything. And he said they lined up perfectly and they were from... Anyway, I actually took the images and I held them up to we finally got copies of the ones that were on the website. We found them on the website afterwards, after Art Bell said this. And then he accused us of stealing the images from the website and making a case of fraud. But we had never used them for anything. We just told him that they existed, and he asked me to talk about them on the show. Begged me to talk about them on the show to help out Chuck Schrammick. And then I held them up actually to our image to the astronomer, the one that the astronomers in Hawaii said were theirs, and but they didn't match exactly. They were close, but they didn't match exactly. But anyway, but it looked like it was a huge furor, a huge furor, and then Art Bell started to push it as a big controversy, while he was simultaneously pushing the story of the Hale-Bopp companion. He called it Hail Mary. And so that's when the idea of a UFO following Hale-Bopp started. But there was like a 3-month or 4 months build-up, or actually it was started in November the year before, so this was like 6 months build-up of this huge thing of Hale-Bopp and the UFO companion. And then there was a remote viewer, a military remote viewer guy, who Art Bell took a fancy to and started to get on his show a lot, and said that they had done the remote viewing on it properly, and it was a UFO following Hale-Bopp, and it was carrying a plant pathogen weapon that they were going to drop on Africa that would wipe out all plant life. And if you wanted to know the safe zones, you can buy his remote viewing kit. I think it was $55 at the time. So I mean, you couldn't get anything more scandalous than that. And Art Bell and this guy were just pushing it. And then in mid-March or sometime in March, the Heaven's Gate group, who we had never heard about, they never contacted us, they never emailed us. They were some real sick puppies. They were eunuchs. They had cut their testicles off. And their leader, I forget his name, White somebody or other. Anyway, their leader was probably worried that he was going to have to tell them it was all a big mistake and they can go home now after they cut their testicles off. Anyway, but he had them all commit suicide. And
I heard about them.
Yeah. That was the Heaven Grace group. Now, the interesting thing about that is while this was all going on, after all this was going on, somebody from the intel agency in the U.S. government contacted us. And apparently we had a big impact on that group. And they used to stay up at night and talk all the time. He gave us absolute proof positive of who he was. He gave us a printed transcript of a very sensitive phone conversation that we had with Art Bell. So he was clearly getting, the phones were all bugged and they were getting copies of everything. And he gave us the transcript and he explained exactly what happened, that the agency thought we needed to be tamped down. They were originally going to try to tamp us down by publicizing that remote viewing can be unhealthy, for people. But then when the Hale-Bopp thing happened, they dropped that whole thing and they said, no, this is too good. So they designed it. They got the images. They connected with another professor somewhere else in another university who knew somebody at Farsight. They had the images sent to the person at. They didn't say, he didn't say where he got the images from, but he got the images and they sent them to this other professor. This other professor reached out to the person that he knew at Farsight, and then sent the images, the 3 rolls of film, 2 blank, and 1 with 5 images. And they had wanted us to use those things for remote viewing, but we never did. So that didn't work because they knew the images were going to be discredited. They had set it up so that the images would be discredited. And they were hoping that would discredit remote viewing if we had used them for that. But we never did that. But they then had a situation where that Art Bell caused such a furor, such a stink about the whole thing, where there's smoke, there's fire. The audience was just totally confused. And they were very happy with the result. They said, this looks like a discredited Farsight. Even though we did nothing with those images, it looked like they discredited us because Art Bell was pounding with it. And and that was sort of how that sort of ended. It was after that we just sort of went quiet and just started to work on things just ourselves, and that ended eventually a couple of years later with me writing the book, Remote Viewing: The Science and Theory of Nonphysical Perception. I needed quiet downtime for that to write that, and so that was very useful from that perspective. But this guy that came to us and told us what happened, he told us everything, and he said this was a classic psyops, and this is what we wanted to do, and it worked better than we possibly could have expected. And he eventually quit because they were planning on something more serious, and he objected. He objected, and he said so he walked out. And anyway, that was what was so valuable about it, and why I was so glad that it happened to us, is because I was extremely naive, and I did not know anything about psyops, and I always thought professors were like angels. I thought they would never lie. And then I realized you can't trust a professor for squat, and then also the guy told us he was a military intel person. He said he doesn't consider these astronomers and physicists and things like that as independent professors. He considers them employees. The entire Department of Defense at that time said those people are employees because they can't do their work without funding from the Department of Defense, which is now the Department of War. But because they have these $100 million grants, these telescopes are hugely expensive. So the guy said that the agency considers all those people employees, and they know that if they don't do what they want, when the agency calls, they may not get another grant, and that means everything. If they can't get another grant, they don't have any telescope time. They don't get anything. How do they pay their mortgage and stuff like that? So that's what the guy said. But what I was so happy about is that it taught me about how intelligence operations actually work. And that was great. I'm absolutely positive the Heaven's Gate thing was an accident in the sense that the Intel people didn't plan that. It just dropped into their lap. And then they probably were smiling from ear to ear saying, wow, it doesn't get better than this. And then I had another Intel person, card-carrying Intel person who I knew personally, and he actually said he was certain that somebody got a promotion on how well that operation was how well it went. He said he's certain somebody got a promotion on how that PSYOPs actually occurred, how that operation occurred. So anyway, that was very interesting. Now, why it's relevant here and why I spent the time to sort of describe it to you on camera is because this 3-eye atlas, to me, sounded a lot like that. You have a comet coming in from far away. Some people saying it may be extraterrestrial. There may be some artificial stuff associated with it. And then sort of the build up. So it really looked to me like a PSYOPs. It looked to me like something was being built up for some type of discreditation of some type. On the other hand, there may be something to it, that there might be something there. Anyway, so I was curious. That's why I designed the target. I said, let's find out what this thing really is. And so now we know it's both a rock and it's an artificial thing on the surface. But in terms of the public sort of spectacle of it, it's acting an awful lot like the Hale-Bopp spectacle. So that was interesting. Go ahead.
No, it's what you just said does sort of affirm what I've come to believe about all of life, is that the world is always in attack mode, and that is all aspects of it. Just when you study history, when you study ecology, when you study the way life predates on itself, you're not removed from the equation at any point in time, past, present, or future. So what we see here with the data that came across from this session, I definitely think that we are going to see, hopefully, some evidence of some extraterrestrial something, and then we're probably going to see a massive cover-up, massive debunking of anybody who sort of moves to try to see more to it than meets the eye. And yeah, I mean, it clearly there is a super strong iron curtain over this planet to try to make everything as dumbed down as possible, as normalized as possible, and anything, whether it comes from outside of this walled garden or inside of this walled garden, that jeopardizes the system, is considered a threat. And so we're probably, hopefully, I mean, just going back to what we were saying from earlier in this target reveal, hopefully we'll see at least something that happens with this 3-eye atlas as it approaches Earth in December. So.
And just for clarity's sake, so that there's no misunderstanding, I am not making any claims about the University of Hawaii astronomers being involved in the Hale-Bopp thing in a conspiratorial way or in any way whatsoever, or for Avi Loeb to be involved in some type of PSYOPs or anything. I'm not saying anything about that with regard to any person. I'm just saying that operation, whoever was involved, did happen back in the 1990s, and this thing smells an awful lot like that.
I think that's I can agree with that statement. Well, yeah.
All right. Now, also back even the Hellbop thing though, the remote viewing sessions we initially had was it did look like it was some type of a portal, and it wasn't following the comet, but when Chuck Schrambeck took a picture, it was in the line of sight. The Art Bell was the one who sort of got up the idea of it following. Now, this particular comet, 3I Atlas, no one's saying that there's UFO following it. It does seem though, but people are watching it, and it's acting oddly.
Has odd behaviors.
Yeah.
Non-comet-like behaviors.
Anyway, so we'll have to just wait and see, but it'll be interesting when it does get near Earth, or as close as it's going to get.
We'll keep our eyes peeled. And if you're an amateur astronomer watching this video, please keep your eyes peeled as well.
Yeah, any type of amateur astronomer or professional astronomer, mid-December when it's close. They have so many telescopes pointed at it now that...
somebody's probably going to see something. So.
Yeah, it'll be some type of... It'll be interesting to see if there's an attack of some type. We should... We'll anyway. All right, Aziz, look, this was great. Super great, and we will go on to the next one.
On to the next one. Thanks a lot.